Welcome to the Soul of Enterprise Business and the Knowledge Economy, sponsored by Woodard, building your ideal practice with coaching, education, community, and resources. I'm Ron Baker, along with my good friend and VeraSage Institute colleague, Ed Kless. Today we have another VeraSage Institute colleague on, Ethan Williams. Hey, Ed, how's it going?
Fantastic, Ron. This is going to be a fun conversation.
It really will. I've been dying to get Ethan on here forever, and I thought we had, but I was wrong. But Ethan Williams, how are you, sir?
Oh, very good. Thank you. And I'm super excited to be here
Yeah,
for the first time.
I'm excited to have you here, and I'm not going to read your bio because I'm going to let you tell us your bio. But how'd you get here? Before we start getting into your fractional CPO company that you've launched, I'd love to know your background and how you got into pricing.
Yeah, sure. It was three simple words that got me into pricing. It was you'll figure it out. So a guy that I really respected, John Sabino, he's running a AI company now. He asked me to come start the pricing function for GE software division. And I said, I've never done this before. And he said, you'll figure it out. And I had a background and I soon realized that B2B pricing is just an NPV in your client's shoes. And I'd been doing that my whole life. So I did that, and GE started, shrinking. At the same time, I got a call from PwC, and they said, "Hey, we see you do this value-based pricing thing. Do you want to come do it here?" And I had never I had never priced professional services at this point. I was mostly working on software. So I picked up this book, Implementing Value Pricing, and read that thing cover to cover. And you and I had a chance to work together at PwC, and that was great. And that was super exciting for me. That was a great success. I mean, I enjoyed my time there. I think we put up big numbers. And then I went to visit a friend in Chicago, and I met his brother-in-law, and his brother-in-law said, "Hey, what do you do for work?" And I told him, and he said, "I think my boss just left, just went to a different division in McKinsey to start that." So I was his first hire. I got put in touch with him, and I went over and helped with value-based, transformation there. Again, putting big numbers on the board, and I think I wanted to have some skin in the game. Probably is like a natural evolution of one's career. So I got a call from KKR asking me to be pricing leader for one of their portfolio companies, which I did for about a year before deciding to start my own thing.
That's awesome. And Ethan, what's your background? What did you study in college?
In college, I studied, business economics. I went to a liberal arts college in Ohio. I started in biology and got weeded out very quickly. And
you hear that a lot. Yeah,
it was the chemistry that did it. And then I worked in banking, in real estate investment banking, and then during the financial crisis, I went back and got my MBA from the University of Rochester, Simon School of Business. Mm. And then coming out of that, I did the GE Experience Commercial Leadership Program, which was great and fantastic.
Yeah, if I remember right, University of Rochester is what was one of the first schools to offer an MBA in pricing.
Yeah,
I don't know the year they started that, but that was really a cool innovation, I thought.
Yeah, and I certainly benefit from that because that is known in the marketplace. I took one pricing class while I was there.
Was that?
Yeah, but yeah, no, I'm still very much in touch with them. They do great things. They have still have the pricing center where they get students involved in live consulting engagements, and I'm still very much in touch with them.
That's really neat. So I know our listeners are, wow, this guy, he's been at PwC, he's been at McKinsey, and KKR is a holding company, isn't it? For adding,
Yeah, the
like
company.
advertising.
Yeah. So KKR uh, bought FGS Global, which was a PR firm, from WPP, and
Hmm.
that's when I stepped in to be pricing leader.
Wow. So you've done three major industries: consulting, accounting, advertising, PR. Um, what did you what did you see in terms of the commonalities of their issues with pricing and their differences in those three sectors?
Yeah, you know, I think I think at the both like accounting and consulting, we're dealing with MBAs or CPAs, and so the cost plus thing just sort of made sense to them, right? And it was a lot harder to shake them from that mindset of we did together, we did, but um, so I would say that was, and then at the PR agency, I was working mostly with like sort of journalists and authors, and um, they were a little bit more timid about price and were very um, welcoming to have somebody come in and do it for them.
Hmm.
But the similarity is you're selling to you're selling in all of those businesses. We're selling to the C-suite, and you got to make sure that that C-suite understands the the ROI or the NPV of what you're offering, and that's always been my sort of specialty is helping to um, quantify that and lead with that uh, instead of price.
Right, right. No, that's great. And so now you're doing your own thing. You started an entity, fractional CPO. CPO. Describe that to us.
Yeah, so I've gotten really into AI and automation, um, and I've just found myself like being able to do everything faster and better. And I when I was at the holding company of KKR, I found myself getting bored doing one transformation at a time, and
Mm.
I said to myself, I should be doing five of these, three of these, whatever it is. But I I think it would be more intellectually stimulating if I'm doing multiple of these, and I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and um, I just I took the leap finally. I think you tried to convince me 2 jobs ago, but I finally
It's only
wised
because
up and
Ed and
listened
I
to
are
you.
It's only because Ed and I are unemployable, Ethan. So I just wanted to make you unemployable. That's all.
I think at this point I think at this point I am. So yeah, no, I'm excited to dive in and do something new.
Do you have a particular type of industry or market that you're going after, a particular type of customer?
Yeah. I sort of did the as any good value-based pricing person would do. I did the math on the back of the envelope, and I said software companies and professional services companies between, call it 50 and 150 million in revenue, um, have not had access to this type of expertise before. There's not a strong investment case for hiring somebody at that level, at that revenue level. Certainly can't afford the major consultants. And so, like I said, I've kind of scaled myself to where the analyst is AI, right, for me. And now I can bring this expertise and these services to those small to mid-sized companies that couldn't access it before.
Oh, that's excellent. Do you find that the concept of value pricing, does it intrigue these people? Do they know something about it? Or when you come in, is it kind of new to them and you have to educate them first?
I mean, I think everybody has heard about it, and not a lot of people do it right. I think people um, are scared of it, but it's not. It's learning a new skill, but it's not a super challenging new skill. You just got to kind of stick to it. So I would say, um, there everybody that I've talked to, nobody says we shouldn't do it. It's more that I don't know how to do it, and um, I'm a pricing operating executive who has done it multiple times, and so that's my value prop is I will help them do it.
Right. Do you find it's easy to get people to make the change?
Yeah, I mean, I, just by virtue of um, when you're in a company, you're you have like all your eggs in one basket, and I think the number one leading indicator of success is how bought in the leadership team is,
Mm,
right? And there's a lot of information asymmetry when you're taking a job, but through LinkedIn you can find the people um, that are gung ho about it, and if you find out that's not the case, you can move on instead of be in a job not doing what you want to do.
right, right. Well, Ethan, this has been great. It's flying by as I knew it would. And folks, I'd like to remind you, if you want to contact me or Ed, you can send us an email to asktsoe@verisage.com. Also, check out our Patreon channel where you can become a member and get access to our bonus content. You can do that at patreon.com/TSOE. And now, a word from our sponsors.
And we are back on the Soul of Enterprise with pricing expert, I will say, Ethan Williams. And Ethan, I want you to react to a quote about pricing that I read last week. And it's this: pricing is part voodoo and part bingo.
Part
Voodoo
voodoo
and part bingo.
Well, you know what? I've always said that it's like part investment banker, part David Blaine. You know, like
Okay.
because, you know, you want to be super accurate on the price, but if you're talking about that value of 10 to 20x or whatever, you could be way wrong on that, right? And it's more about painting a picture that, like, you're definitely here on price, and you're going to be somewhere here on value. Part voodoo, part bingo. I like that.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I thought, but and you were mentioning the fact that you went the chemistry route and bailed out of that. I didn't. I was so bad at chemistry in high school, I didn't even try. Like, I was like, not even. But I will say this: pricing is a little bit like balancing chemical equations, because I could never figure that crap out. Like, you never knew exactly what was happening with that, and that's why I think so it's the same thing. That value piece that you're talking about is that chemical equation to me in my mind. Other people get it. It's ethereal, right? There's a spiritual, as we would say, a spiritual component to it.
Yeah, for sure. And actually that's something I took from the Ron's book, is just how you can't forget about all of the qualitative stuff as well. And I certainly had to fall back on that a little bit more in PR. But thinking about your analogy a little bit more, I think before what did you say it was? It was part pink,
part voodoo, part bingo.
Okay, part bingo. I was thinking of like a lottery machine, and the balls popping up, because
right
before you get somebody to look at pricing, it can feel awful random like that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's part of it. One of the challenges, and you mentioned that when you got out of the professional services piece, because they're the ones who are so tied to the billable hour and the timesheet and costs and all of that stuff. It's interesting to me how other businesses can easily break that cycle of, because they were probably told by some accountant someplace that your price is based on your cost. Right.
Yeah.
But they are so much easier to break that cycle in their head. And I wonder if you had any thoughts on that, working with both of those folks. Is it just because professionals have been so jaded and it's endemic to them that their time is what is of value? Is that why they can't break that cycle?
Yeah. And I think that's, the people who are leading those companies right now came up under the mindset that you just described. So I found younger leaders to be more curious about the topic, but also, man, think about all the operations that run on the billable hour. And I've definitely I think more of the resistance to alternative fee arrangements that I have seen has come from internal than it has from external, right? We often like the client is asking for it, but we can't do it because we don't know how to account for it or know if it's profitable or whatever. But I think the probably the less that you've been brought up in it, and if it was really hard to convince accountants to try something new.
I think there's twofold, like a double whammy in a sense. One is that for a long time they prided themselves on, I billed 2,500 hours last year. Like that was that was how they, in a sense, sense their own worth was through this. So if you're telling them, well, if it'd be great if you could only bill 200 hours, but the 200 hours are at 100 times your rate, like that, or 100 times the value of that, right? It's hard to get past that. But I will say this, part of the challenge that I've found in working with accountants, especially the larger firms, is that oftentimes the people that they are servicing used to work either for that firm, or another firm, and they're like, wait a minute, you're not billing on hours anymore, but that's how you always did it.
Right, yeah, and certainly in auditing at PwC, we saw that. Most chief accountants are from the Big Four, and that's what they know and that's what they want. So that was a bit of a headwind, to your point.
If you had to guess, how much do you think value-based pricing is? How much traction has it made in PwC and perhaps even the other Big Four? Do you think they really have shifted their mindset, or would you say overall it's still stuck on billable hour or at least cost-based?
So I know that I talked to some colleagues at PwC a few weeks ago, and Ron, you'll be happy to hear that they're still using the tools that we bought or that we built together. So I think at the least the tax practice is still really leaned into it. I know that a woman, Christina Worth, who worked with us at PwC, is now at KPMG, driving the same play. So they've certainly drank the Kool-Aid. But it's at professional services firms, like 25% adoption is pretty good, right? As opposed to like to GE or a corporation where it's you get your marching orders and you should be at like 99% adoption. So I had to learn that too, different scale. But I will say, when I was asked to sit on a panel for WPP when I first joined that role, and the CEO of WPP was talking about pricing, and he had me up there, and the example he gave is, he said, we need to be better at pricing, and I just negotiated against PwC for the auditing contract, and they did, like, we need to be more like that. They did a really good job. So Ron, we should pat ourselves on the back there, because we helped roll that out.
Good stuff. Well, Ron asked you about the differences between products and services. I want to ask the same question, but about something very specific. And that is, one of the things Ron and I have talked about this, the majority of pricing mistakes are underpricing rather than overpricing. Do you think that is the same in both products and services, or is there a tendency toward one or the other in one of those spaces?
Underpricing, or you think, is it underpricing or over?
Is a bigger mistake. Underpricing happens more often than overpricing.
Yeah, I mean, I think just by the fact that, like, you have transactions clearing with very little resistance means that they're probably too low. Right.
Left money on the table, damn it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're, as a pricer, if you're sitting at the deal desk and your phone's not ringing, you're underpricing, right? So yeah, I would agree. I think in both of those, I see more underpricing than overpricing.
Is it more of a problem in products or services, or pretty much the same in both? That was really what I wanted to get to.
I think that when the product is software, I found that it's way more variable because they don't have the cost to fall back on, right? So um, in in professional services, they're going to be kind of in the range, and they're going to be transparent. So you have to do value-based pricing in software because you don't have costs to fall back on. So I would say it's a bigger standard deviation when you're looking at when your product is software.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. One of the questions I always ask a pricer, and it's an unfair question, so take it where you want. Is pricing an art or a science?
Gosh, I mean, I guess this is sort of what I meant when I was saying it's a little bit David Blaine, it's a little bit, investment banker, but I do think it's both. I think, and it's a spectrum, right? I think the pricing itself, it's really hard for me to talk about pricing and not talk about value. So pricing probably leans a little bit more to the science side of things, whereas value is a little bit more than on the art, side of things. But you have to learn that art. I mean, if you speak value, right? If you're playing offense on value, you play defense on price a lot less. So it's both, and it's worth the investment in learning the art part of it.
Outstanding. Great. Thanks so much, Ethan. We're halfway through the show. I can't believe it's
Wow.
this gone already. But we want to, if you want to send an email to Ron or me, you can do that by sending an email to asktsoe@verisage.com. The website is The Soul of Enterprise. Show notes previous shows are always there. Also check out our Patreon channel, patreon.com/TSOE, where you can get the show commercial free, as well as our bonus episodes that we record after each show. But right now, a word from our sponsors.
Welcome back, everybody. We're here with Ethan Williams, the founder of Fractional CPO. I guess that stands for Chief Price Officer, right?
Yeah, it was Fractional Pricing Advisors. Yep.
Oh, Fractional Pricing Advisors. I'm sorry. Yeah. So, Ethan, you recently wrote a LinkedIn post, and its title was "Your Price Isn't About a Cut of the Pie. It's about helping your client expand the pie." That's great because
Yes.
it's outcome driven rather than input or even output driven. It's more outcome. Describe that. What do you mean by this?
Yeah. So I think, even a lot of practitioners of value-based pricing probably, get this wrong. That, when you say, "Hey, I'm going to do this for you, and it's going to create $100 in benefit, and I want 10%," that you have value priced that. To me, that value-based pricing is pricing your product or service so that it is best, uh, the best NPV alternative given all other alternatives, at least in the B2B sense. And so if you're in that mindset of taking a cut, right, you're on opposite sides of that negotiation table, and the incentive for the client is to say the value's less, and you want to argue and say the value's more. When you go in and you say, "Look, my services have prices, and they're priced to be your best value. Let's work on the business case together." Then all of a sudden you're on the same side of the negotiation table, and you're both working to make that pie bigger, because you've got to go sell it. Even if you're the CEO, talking to the CEO or the C-suite, they still have to sell it to the board, right? So, working together to build, or to bake a bigger pie, I think is more constructive than arguing about what cut you get of a static pie.
Right. I love that because it's the one place where both interests are aligned. We want to create more value. The buyer would like more value from us. So how do we achieve that together? It's a
Yeah, yeah,
great philosophy. Does an example come to mind that you can share of how
yeah.
you were able to do this?
I think yes, I had a very early win at GE, and I'm still friends with this particular salesman, and he was my first customer in this venture, because of how successful this was. But um, he was going in to sell a piece of software, to a steel manufacturer, and I really helped tease out of him what it was, um, that we were doing, right? And this particular thing was reducing unplanned downtime. So, to make a long story short, we figured out how to quantify the value of unplanned downtime, and he went in there and he said, "Hey, this is the value of putting this software on this machine." And then he said, together we worked this business case out. "Hey, but look around, you got 10 of those machines, right? You do that, the value goes up to this. You do, and then we said, "Hey, you got like 5 plants across the country just like this," right? And then the value goes up to, and so using the value, um, and starting on the value, then it becomes their number, right? Like I had a guy
Right.
tell me one time, "Even when I'm wrong, I'm right," right? Because on the value side of things, because you get the client, they take the pen out of your hand on the whiteboard, they say, "No, no, no, you can never do that. It's this, boom, boom, boom." But um, now you're, like you said, on the same side of the table, and that's an example I think back to. And like I said, he's was my first client in this endeavor.
Yeah, no, that's great. I just read about the pricer from Philips Medical, And the way he looks at ROI for value for, like, say, an MRI machine, is he breaks it into economic value, operational value, clinical value, emotional value, and then societal value. And I thought that was really cool because he's not just looking at the revenue it could bring the hospital, he's also looking at the cost saving because they can do the MRI scans in half the time. And he's also looking at the value to the patient, right? And making it a better experience for them. And then, of course, for the community at large, because now they can do more MRI scans. You don't have to wait in line as long and all of that. And I just thought that was a really interesting way broadly to think about ROI, because you got to think about
Yeah.
their customers too, not just your customer that you're selling to.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a great article. It's called The Elements of B2B Value, and Bain put it out. But it's a pyramid of all those different sources of value, and that thing's never like more than a arm's length away
Go
from
away.
me, because
I remember that.
it totally depends on who you're speaking with. If you want to talk about, that operational value, maybe a little bit lower in the organization, or that aspirational value, more at the C-suite and board level. But that's a great article that really breaks it down to its elements.
Yeah, it really is. Um, and because different customers have different value propositions, I would imagine when you go in for to help somebody with pricing, that you're also looking at customer segmentation, maybe putting
Yes.
customers into different segments and making different offerings. How do you think about that just philosophically when you approach that issue? How do you think about it?
I guess at the highest level, I think the easiest thing for people to do, and what I see when I come in, is that they have made some sort of um, firmographic segmentation, right? They've looked at their data and they've said, oh, our customers fit in these revenue buckets or geography buckets. I think you got to focus more on buyer personas than than the firmographics of your
Hmm.
buyer. And so that, I always think back to the example of the lawn care person that came to your house, right? Like, you got to ask, why are you asking for this lawn care? Is it because you want to sell the house, or is it because you just want to look out and see a nice yard? But uh, I think the philosophy is those offerings should be built around buyer personas, um, only,
And the outcomes they're looking for.
exclusively.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And Ethan, what KPIs do you like to look at? I realize this is very contextual, but what are some of kind of like your favorite heuristics for KPIs that you like to look at to demonstrate that your pricing has been effective?
Me, for
Y-
my
Yeah, for your
yeah.
customers, what KPIs do you like to show them?
So I guess what I like to say is, if we do this and we do this right, you're gonna, win more, win bigger, and win faster, right? So what's the average deal size? What's the cycle time? And win rate and margin would be the probably the four that I think of most often. But you're right, it's always it's different in every situation, because
Right.
value is, subjective.
Right, right. I know one of the things that I confronted with pricing and professional services is, you'd watch their RFP success go down because they were winning everything they put out there because their prices were
Yeah.
too low. Back to Ed's point, and that was a real hard challenge to get them over. No, you shouldn't have a 75% win rate. It should probably be something
Yeah,
less than that. Yeah. Uh,
that's
uh,
that's Yeah, that's interesting. I suppose I could increase win rates by just dropping the price, right?
Yeah,
Make it easy.
it- yeah. Especially
But
I think about the big four. They shouldn't be winning more than 25%, right? Just
right.
statistically. I mean, if they're winning 50, they're probably the cheapest bidder. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's always been a challenge. I realize this is a very contextual question too, but I'm just curious. We love to ask every pricer this. Um, there's a huge debate in pricing circles. Where should the pricing authority lie? Now, I know you would say with the fractional pricer, from your business perspective, but in general, like say you get them to a point where they bring in the pricing in house. Where do you think that authority should lie? Where should the pricing, should it be centralized, decentralized, some type of hybrid? And who should the pricing people report to? CMO, CEO, COO, CFO?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I hate to give the answer. It's different every time, but
And that's
you know,
fair.
so if you think about it in terms of um, a car company, right, where you have advertisements, they're on TV all the time, they have the price, um, that needs to be very centrally controlled, right? You can't have dealers deviating too much or making local commercials with wildly different prices. But when you're in professional services, and you taught me this, is that um, you're trying to search the entire demand curve, right?
Right.
And if you're a partner and you own that business, I think you should be have a lot of authority to be able to um, price along the demand curve, so long as you have a healthy understanding of, what's the marginal cost of that next hour of capacity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I guess yeah, I kind of always lean towards centralization because I know so many partners that do pricing that are terrible at it.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and
I mean, the
it,
best way to uh, improve pricing is not to let bad pricers price. I think you said that.
yeah.
But it also depends on if you're in build or run mode, right? Like
Mm,
when we were working together at PwC, we were in build mode and we
right.
reported very high up in the organization because we needed their air cover and support. When it gets down to when the message is out, when the training is done, it might be okay to bring it down a little bit in the organization.
Right. Right. Either way, you do need C-suite support, don't you?
100%. That is, without that, I would caution any pricer to ask themselves uh, very honestly if they're going to be able to be successful in that job if the C-suite doesn't support it.
Right. Well, Ethan, this has flown by. Thank you so much. Ed's going to take you the rest of the way home. And folks, I'd like to remind you if you want to contact me or Ed, send us an email to asktsoe@verisage.com. And now a word from our sponsors, including Woodard.
And we are back with Ethan Williams. FractionalPricingAdvisors.com is his website and company, so check him out there. Ethan, we had a question come in from one of our listeners during the show. You talked a little bit about it with Ron, but I'll just read the question from Ted. Thanks so much, Ted, for sending it in. He said, how do you gauge how much the customer is willing to pay in customer-centric pricing? Ted is an enrolled agent, so he does probably tax returns and some other accounting for folks. So how would you go about, if you are Ted, gauge how much the customer is willing to pay in customer-centric pricing?
What do you mean by customer-centric pricing? What is that?
So I think he means value pricing. I think he means value pricing. How do you have the value conversation? What are your thoughts on having that conversation with the customer to understand the value in a one-on-one professional situation?
Yeah. So, well, I'm gonna take a play out of your guys' book here, but the best way to not hear no is to not pose a yes no question. So I think you get that chance to put three, like if you craft three different options at three different price points, you can search a range, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of having to guess one place. And I think probably the less you know about that customer, maybe the bigger the range you want to use. Like, here's ultra premium, here's
I think his question though is how do you get to value with that customer? What were the techniques that you used to not setting the price, but getting to value with the customer? How do you get the customer to realize what the value is?
Oh, okay, gotcha. Well, actually, I have an AI agent in OpenAI. It's called Value-Based Pricing Advisor. I think they haven't figured out how to monetize this, so I don't make any money off of this. But I walk through and say, what is the outcome that we're driving, and then I try to think about that in terms of like the financial statement and what are the KPIs. And then it's also that sort of co-creation of the business case where you're gonna find that out. So I would say co-creation of the business case is where you figure out that willingness to pay. And I always start with a 10x. That's sort of like rule of thumb. Hey, if you can offer a 10x business case, that's pretty hard to say no to. But if you use that OpenAI agent, that thing will walk you through down to how to quantify that value, and maybe Ted starts there.
Excellent. Well, I'm sure we'll see if we can get that out to him. And if we can't find it, Ethan will ask you for a link and we'll get it sent over to him. Just two things quick, Ted, for his answer. One, I would recommend Mahan Khalsa's book. I always go to this. Well, Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play. Best book I think ever written about the value conversation. There is another one that is called Business Think, also by Mahan Khalsa, which is interesting because it's written from the customer's perspective. So what should the customer be thinking about before they make a purchase? So it's a very interesting concept. Anyway, let's get back to AI. You led me right to where I wanted to go, which is how are you using AI? So number one, you've created some agents to do that. What else? What else are you doing with AI?
So here's something that's pretty cool, and I put this on LinkedIn. I wrote about this on LinkedIn, so you could go there and read about it. But back in my GE days, right, where budget was no issue, we did a Van Westendorf pricing meter study. And that's a good study to help figure out a price range for something that's like never existed before. And it occurred in that, that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to do. Because you literally have to interview a couple hundred customers, right? Potential customers. And I was thinking about it, and I said, why do those people have to be real, right? Why do those have to be real people to just get an idea? And so I have been experimenting with and have created, buyer profiles of potential buyers and giving them deep backgrounds. And then you kind of set the memory of the model to 0 so that you're not asking, they're not remembering from line to line what the answer is. But then you ask the 4 questions you'd ask in a Van Westendorf study to these synthetic buyers. And, I'm able to do that for a fraction of what a fully baked study would be. And I've compared the results, and they're encouraging. So that's one thing.
So you're using AI to be that persona in a sense?
Yeah, and ask what are you willing to pay, and the deeper you build that profile of that synthetic person, I think you'll get you'll probably get a more accurate answer, and you increase the sample size. But I've also figured out how to loop it, right? So it's not like I'm sitting there typing it into OpenAI 150 times. But I synthetic Van Westendorf pricing study is one way that I'm using it today.
Okay. And what do you have a particular? Are you OpenAI? Or do you use a combination of tools? Just curious.
Well, I'm so I use mostly OpenAI because I'm not a great coder, and I sort of taught myself how to code through AI, right? Asking it to code certain things. So I have an OpenAI API, which I pay for, and I can get to pay for most of them. So I mostly use that when I'm looping something like that. But I know that Copilot is more up to date, and I'll ask different services to check each other's answers, which so I do that with Google and OpenAI. But I'm mostly building these products using OpenAI.
Very cool. Really neat stuff. Well, I can't believe it even we're at the end of the show. Thank you so much for appealing on the Soul of Enterprise. We'll definitely have you back to see how things are going with you and the new entity. Love to hear those stories as you advance. Ron, what do we got coming up next week?
Next week, Ed, we're going to talk to Jordan Birnbaum, and he used to be the behavioral economist at ADP, so I'm curious what he's up to now.
Absolutely. That's going to be a great conversation, too. So I'll see you in 167 hours.
This has been the Soul of Enterprise, Business and the Knowledge Economy, sponsored by Woodard. Building your ideal practice with coaching, education, community, and resources. Join us next week, folks, on Friday at noon Pacific time. In the meantime, check us out at soulofenterprise.com. We'll have full show notes where you can find more about Ethan at Fractional Pricing Advisors.com. And also, if you want to contact me or Ed, send us an email to asktsoe@verisage.com. Thanks for listening, folks. Have a great weekend.